right now there's like two big demographics that are being marketed to, and one of those demographics is being marketed to less and less and less. One of the things that we're kind of seeing out there in the advertising world is that everybody and their mother, especially big agencies, are trying to market to millennials, people between the ages of like, say, 27 and 45. And the reason for that is because, well, millennials, people of that age group, they've entered into the time of their lives that has been classically associated with the largest amount of spending, the largest amount of consumption. This is the age where, people turn 30, and turning 30 is like hitting puberty, but for money. And they're starting to have kids, they're getting promoted at work, they're starting to take over where their old bosses are retiring, yada, yada, yada. But here's an interesting thing. This is the first time I think this has happened demographically. Right now, in 2024, baby boomers and the generation above them, the ages 55 to 95, they're spending more than millennials. They're still spending more. This is anomalous. In the past, if you wanted to mine for gold, you go for the younger mountain, you ignore the older, already mined, tapped, yada, yada mountain. And as yet, millennials, if you talk to a lot of direct response people, they're not getting a whole lot of money from the millennial generation. They just ain't spending. Probably because they ain't got no fucking money. But people in that 55 to 95 generation, older, white, conservative, religious, biological males, like that demographic, that's where the money is. We have the stats to prove that. Now, does this mean that big ad agencies are dumb? No. Like, the people that are coming out of like portfolio schools and stuff like that, they're all doing what they've has worked forever. This is what you're supposed to do when you're doing mainstream advertising, which is you target people in that pocket of like high spending. But we're living in a world that isn't like that anymore. We're living in a world where it makes more sense financially. If we're going after the money, you want to go for the mountain that's been consistently producing money. So in the vein of that, in the vein of like giving you advice on like going to the older mountain that's been mined before and mined a lot, so that you can actually come out on top and actually make some money by targeting this particular demographic, I have like 4 characteristics that I want to give you and a few anecdotes and examples. And, at the end of this, I'll even show you some copy that actually specifically speaks to that demographic and I think does so extremely well and upholds a lot of the things that I'm going to be talking about. All right, so characteristic number 1, people of this age group have a general and justifiable mistrust of institutions and large corporations and government and things like that. And that seems kind of obvious, but you probably don't know why, because you probably don't empathize with what they went through. So this group of people, they grew up at a time when they were literally forced to sign up, get drafted, and go to war to fight an enemy they didn't want to fight. Like in a country that wasn't their own. The period of time where the draft was going on, like that affected baby boomers and the generation before in a way that I don't think anybody watching this really realizes. And what was the reward for having gone and quote unquote fought for your country in a place that was basically abandoned like that? The reward was like getting punished by all the hippies back at home who like falsely blamed them and still do. And so you have to understand that like there's a justifiable reason that these people don't like government very much. Government has been the main source of oppression in their life. On top of that, they also grew up at a time where all the conspiracy theories, like, oh, the CIA is trying to do mind control, all of it turned out to be fucking true in their lifetimes. Like, just look at MK Ultra or MK Naomi. Like, this population that we're selling to, that we're talking about, were literally treated as guinea pigs by institutions, by the government. And then on top of that, like, then you go through 40 years where, like, big banks, get away with just rampant theft from the lower class, and nobody gets punished for it. There's incredible corruption in government, and nobody gets punished for it, at least not in the ways that they want. And then you also have to look and see, like, there was a generation in the 1950s where you were able to get a blue-collar, like, job as a white dude and support a whole family. You know, be the man of the house. And by the 90s, that was all gone. And here's the thing. That wasn't lost. It was taken from them. Wages, real inflation-adjusted wages, have not kept up with the productivity. The very productivity of the people that had to work their entire lives. And so they've constantly been feeling like they've been left behind and left behind and left behind as they see people getting richer and richer and richer who are not them. So you have to ask, why in the hell would these people trust institutions now? Why should they trust the mainstream media? Why should they trust like the conventional modes of thinking? For that reason, in your copy, what you want to do is you want to be looking for more contrarian perspectives, things that go against the grain. Really, what you want to do is kind of speak to this feeling, their actual lived experience, because what they have seen is something that was really, really good, get gradually through the decades just eroded and eroded and eroded as everything that they were taught to trust as children betrayed them. For that reason, you want to be selling against the mainstream when you sell to this group of people. Another thing, because of that mistrust of institutions, they tend to be mistrustful of ads that are very didactic. Hey, do this. Hey, think this. Hey, feel this. Isn't this great? Blah, blah, blah. The best ads that work really, really well for this generation are conversational. And even better than conversational is storytelling. And the key thing about doing a good story in copy is you just have to not be boring. And what is the best intro to a story? Let me tell you a story about a fight that I once saw. Let me tell you a story about this. No, you just sit down and you start telling a story. Hey, did you see those two dykes fighting in the parking lot? That's called a pattern interrupt. And what's more important than it being a pattern interrupt and getting attention, what? Two dykes fighting out in the parking lot? Is it raises so many questions. That is an example of a good story, or at least the good beginning of a story. So what you want to do to make your ads more credible and trustworthy for this demographic is not tell people how to feel, but let people sort of discover how to feel by you showing them a story or having a conversation with them, not at them. Another characteristic of this particular demographic is that they're extremely susceptible to zero-sum thinking. What is zero-sum thinking? It's the notion where basically every single gain that somebody else has is a loss for you. It's very competitive. It's very binary. And this is a result of, again, them growing up at a time during the Cold War. If the U.S. lost, the USSR won. Everything was primarily competitive. And I'll give a specific example. So, in the 1950s, 1960s, when, desegregation was happening, a lot of, community pools existed throughout the South, and they were segregated. There was just no black people allowed at community pools. And when the Supreme Court basically said, hey, you can't segregate pools anymore, that's bad, rather than let black people come to the pools, most communities just closed the pools. And that's not a criticism. That's just how they were raised. That's what they saw. That's the way that they perceive and think about the world. And we're not going to dissuade them of that kind of thinking. And so better thing to do is just kind of lean into it a little bit, just sort of accept that they feel this way. And one of the easiest ways to do that is just acknowledge that most of them feel like they've lost something in their life. That's the reason why MAGA, Make America Great Again, is so successful as a slogan. All the people in that demographic feel like they've lost something. Zero-sum thinking. And so, again, like a good story, it raises questions. Well, how did we lose it? Where did it go? Who took it from us? And there you're able to make a larger, broader argument. There you're able to make like paint an enemy. There you're able to sell against alternatives, especially if the alternatives are mainstream. So in your copy, if you can actually lean into this zero-sum thinking and show them like the actual agent that's responsible for their perceived loss, you're going to be able to sell to them and speak to the things that they're already naturally concerned about. One last thing, and this is something that I touched on earlier. People like 55 to 95, white males especially, they're going to be more susceptible to FOMO, fear of missing out. They're going to be more susceptible to the notion or the implication that they have to catch up on something, that people have been given an advantage by sheer dint of their privilege, perhaps, that they never got. And so now they feel like they have to play catch up. But more importantly than that, and this is important for copy too, they have to play catch up at a time when they're older. Their joints hurt. They have less energy. They have less knowledge of like computer systems and like technology and like how the world is transforming digitally. Try explaining cryptocurrencies to a 72-year-old conservative white male, and it's not going to fucking happen. So this is really important in your copy if you want to paint like a transformational story. You want to paint the story, the starting point of the story, as people being in their situation. You want to show, like, these people didn't go to Harvard, so don't show like the person who like went and got an Ivy League education and then got rich. No, you want to show a struggle that's starting from a point where it's closer to what the demographic is actually experiencing. Now, I want to show you a promo that is actually fucking brilliant because it leans into all of the stuff that I'm talking about. Will you be left behind? A terrifying new trend is creating thousands of new millionaires. Dear reader, in regular places all over America, the lights are going out. No, I don't mean streetlights or any other kind of electrical gizmo. I'm talking about a vastly more important kind of light, the kind that comes from within. I'm talking about how, all over the country, Americans are losing hope in our most basic social agreement. I've never seen this discussed in any other publication or financial research paper, but it's this change that worries me most about our country today. And I know if you think about it and look closely at what's happening right now, you'll agree this kind of light is developed from living with a purpose, learning how hard work leads to success, believing you are being treated fairly, and from knowing that success, at least on some level, is possible for everyone in America. This is the light that comes from a productive career, a sense of accomplishment and independence, a happy family life. And this light, which should be inside us all, is disappearing across America. Now, that's part of the lead of this particular promo that I think was the control for like 2 years, like sold, I think hundreds of thousands of subscriptions. Like it made a ton of money. It came out around like 2018, 2019, sometime around there. And like a lot of copywriters I knew hated it. They were like, what the hell is this mamby-pamby sentimental shit? I thought it was genius because guess what? It was speaking very specifically to literally everything that I've just been telling you in this particular presentation. That promo was successful because it spoke to how this demographic feels. They feel like they've been left behind. They feel like the spirit that was good about America is fading away. All of this to say is that if you write copy and keep the lived experience of your demographic, especially the older white male conservative demographic in mind, you're going to sell a lot. It's going to work. Listen, you can appeal to this demographic with fear. You can appeal to them with greed. But if you weave those emotions, those sort of like limbic emotions in with these like more nuanced appeals that actually touch on the things that they resonate with, you're going to sell a lot more than you expected. And you're certainly going to sell a lot more than if you try to appeal to millennials. So to sum it all up, have empathy for these people. Try to understand where they're coming from and try to have that empathy shine through in your copy and you'll make a bunch of fucking money. Okay, bye.